Picture this. You've known someone your whole life. You've worked beside them, laughed with them, thought about them every single day. And they have absolutely no idea how you feel. Now, picture getting exactly what you wish for. That's where the horror starts. Today, we're digging into one of the most talked about horror films of 2026. Obsession, written and directed by Curry Barker, distributed by Blumhouse and Focus Features. Made for under $1 million and acquired for over $14 million after a bidding war at TIFF. A 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sold out screenings at Fantastic Fest. And reviewers who say they still haven't stopped thinking about it 7 months after watching it. So what is it about this film that gets under your skin so completely? Today, we're going to find out. Because buried underneath the supernatural horror is something that reaches into real psychology and what it reveals about the way we love, the way we obsess, and the way we try to control the people we claim to care about is genuinely disturbing. Let's get into it. Part 1. What is the film actually about? At its core, Obsession is a be careful what you wish for story. A classic monkey's paw tale. Bear, played by Michael Johnston, is a shy, sensitive music store employee. He's had feelings for his childhood friend and co-worker Nikki, played by Navarrete, for as long as he can remember. But he can't bring himself to just tell her. Instead of vulnerability, Bear takes a shortcut. He wanders into a crystal shop, buys a novelty toy from the 1960s called the One Wish Willow. And despite being warned, it almost never works out well. He snaps it in half and makes a wish. He wishes for Nikki to love him more than anything in the world. The wish is granted. Instantly. Completely. And then everything falls apart. Because what Bear wanted was love. What he got was possession. Nikki becomes consumed by him. Erratic. Volatile. Desperate. Dangerous. Her behavior escalates from sweet to suffocating to genuinely terrifying. As critics have noted, the film shifts from funny to horrifying in a fraction of a second. And that tonal instability is part of what makes it so deeply unsettling. You're laughing, and then your stomach drops, and you realize you've been watching something awful unfold the whole time. The film asks a question it never quite states out loud. If the person you love is only loving you because you made them, is that love at all? Or is it something much darker? Part 2. The real psychology. Limerence. To understand what obsession is really about, we need to start with a psychological concept you may not have heard of, but that you have almost certainly experienced. It's called limerence. The term was coined by psychologist Dorothy Tenev in 1979 to describe a state of intense romantic infatuation, one that goes far beyond a crush. Limerence involves intrusive, obsessive thoughts about another person. It involves replaying every interaction, analyzing every text message, feeling physical euphoria when they acknowledge you, and genuine despair when they don't. One clinical description calls it an acute onset, unexpected, obsessive attachment to one person. This is key to the film. The more unclear the other person's feelings are, the more intense the limerence becomes. Bear is a textbook limerent. He can't confess his feelings. He can't act. He replays every moment with Nikki. He is paralyzed by uncertainty, and rather than resolve that uncertainty honestly, by simply talking to her, he reaches for a magical solution. Now here's where the psychology gets really interesting. Researchers have found that limerence shares cognitive characteristics with obsessive-compulsive disorder and substance use disorder. The same intrusive loops, the same craving/relief cycle, the same inability to simply stop. Some research has even traced limerence to insecure attachment styles formed in early childhood. The anxious, desperate quality of limerence mirrors the quality of anxious avoidant attachment in infants. Bear doesn't just like Nikki. He has built an entire inner world around her. She has become, in psychological terms, his limerent object, the person onto whom he projects all his longing, all his hope, all his sense of self-worth. And what does the wish do? It rips away the very thing that makes limerence limerence, the ambiguity. It forces resolution. It answers the question he was too afraid to ask. And the answer is catastrophic. But Bear isn't the victim he thinks he is. Here's the thing. The film quietly insists on, even when it's making you feel sorry for Bear. He had every option available to him. He chose the worst one. Limerence is real, and the pain of it is real. But limerence is not an excuse. At every point in this story, Bear could have simply talked to Nikki. He could have risked rejection, the way every person who has ever fallen for someone has eventually had to. He could have been honest. He could have been vulnerable. Instead, he went to a crystal shop and bought a wish. And that distinction between the pain of longing and the choice of what to do with it is what the film is really putting on trial. Bear tells himself the story that a lot of Limerence people tell themselves, that their feelings are so intense, so overwhelming, so special, that normal rules don't apply, that the strength of what he feels somehow entitles him to her, that if she just knew how much he cared, she'd feel it too. Researchers call this kind of thinking a Limerence distortion, the belief that the depth of your feeling is evidence that the relationship is meant to be. It isn't. Feelings are not consent. And here's what's most uncomfortable about Bear's arc. He doesn't make the wish out of malice. He isn't twirling a mustache. He genuinely believes he loves Nikki. But what he's actually doing, as psychologists who study coercive relationships will tell you, is prioritizing his own emotional relief over her freedom to choose. He cannot tolerate the uncertainty. He cannot sit with the possibility that she might not want him. And so, unconsciously, perhaps, but consequentially, he removes that possibility entirely. That is not love. That is the fear of love, dressed up as devotion. The film is brilliant for never letting you forget this, even in its funniest moments. Every time you laugh at the awkward chaos Bear has created, there's an undercurrent pulling at you. He did this. He chose this. And Nikki is paying for it. Part 3. Erotomania and the horror of forced love. There's a second psychological concept at work in this film, one that maps more closely onto what happens to Nikki after the wish is granted. It's called erotomania, sometimes known as the Clearenbaltz syndrome, and it's classified in the DSM-5 as a subtype of delusional disorder. Erotomania is the delusional, unshakable belief that another person is deeply in love with you. Sufferers often believe their beloved is secretly communicating their feelings through coded signals, glances, gestures, coincidences. They may pursue the object of their belief obsessively, certain that their love is returned, despite all evidence to the contrary. Now, what the film does is invert this. Nikki isn't delusional. Her love is real. It's just been manufactured. She genuinely, compulsively, catastrophically loves Bear. She hasn't chosen it. She cannot escape it. Her entire identity has been overwritten by this enchantment. That inversion is the genius of the film. We're used to stories about unrequited obsession, the stalker, the unhinged ex, the person who won't take no for an answer. What obsession does is take that same psychology and place it inside the victim. Nikki becomes the obsessive. But she didn't choose to. She was made this way. As director Curry Barker himself has said, the film's themes are heavily rooted in consent. And at its core, the horror isn't the enchantment. It's the realization that Bear's wish was, from the very beginning, an act of coercion. Even if he didn't fully understand what he was doing, he wanted her love without earning it. He wanted the outcome, without the vulnerability. He wanted control, without admitting he wanted control. The monkey's paw gave him exactly that. Part 4. The monkey's paw, a psychological myth. The be careful what you wish for archetype is one of the oldest in storytelling. But it's not just folklore. It's a reflection of something deeply true about human psychology. The most famous version is W. Jacobs' 1902 short story, The Monkey's Paw, about a family who uses a cursed talisman to wish for money, only to receive it as compensation for the death of their son. The story argues that fate cannot be manipulated without consequences, that there is something fundamentally wrong with trying to shortcut the natural order of things. Curry Barker has actually cited the Simpsons parody of that story, the Treehouse of Horror segment, as the direct inspiration for obsession. And that detail matters because it reveals what Barker has done. He's taken a silly, well-worn premise and loaded it with genuine moral weight. The psychological truth behind the monkey's paw myth is this. We often think we know what we want. We're certain of it, but our desires are shaped by our wounds, by loneliness, insecurity, fear of rejection, fear of loss. When we wish for love, what we're often really wishing for is safety, control, the elimination of uncertainty. And you cannot wish your way to genuine connection, because genuine connection requires another person's actual free will, their choice to be with you, their capacity to also choose not to be with you. Bear eliminates that capacity, and in doing so, he doesn't get love. He gets a prison for both of them. Part 5. The gender dimension. There's something else worth discussing here that critics have picked up on, that Barker has addressed directly. The vast majority of horror is, historically, about men doing terrible things to women. The genre is saturated with female victims. What Obsession does, in a way that's genuinely subversive, is center its horror on a man's desire itself as the source of danger. Bear isn't a monster in the traditional sense. He's sympathetic. He's quiet and sensitive. You root for him, and that's exactly the trap the film sets. Because the moment he makes that wish, he has intentionally or not stripped Nikki of her autonomy. He has decided, unilaterally, that she should love him, and the film refuses to let him off the hook for that. One review put it well. Obsession plays like a horror film where the source of terror is a social situation, spiraling out of control. And that social situation is one man's refusal to accept that the woman he loves might not want him back. That's not a supernatural premise. That's a recognizable pattern. And recognizing it on screen, dressed up in horror, is what makes audiences squirm in a way that goes beyond jump scares. Part 6. Why this film hits so hard. The broader takeaway. So why does Obsession work as well as it does? Because it takes a set of feelings most of us have had. Longing paralysis. The desperate wish that the person we love would just love us back, and it shows us what those feelings look like when they're allowed to bypass. The most important part of love, the other person's choice. Limerence is real. The longing it creates is real. And the temptation to want that longing resolved by any means necessary. That's real too. But what Obsession understands, and what it forces us to sit with across 109 deeply uncomfortable minutes, is that love obtained through control isn't love. It's captivity, and eventually, it destroys everyone caught inside it. The ending. Bear surviving, but deeply traumatized. Nikki's fate sealed by an enchantment she never chose. Isn't just horror movie catharsis. It's a clinical portrait of what Obsession actually does. It consumes the person obsessed, and it destroys the person they claim to love. Barker made this film and got something out of it that most horror films with 50 times the budget never achieve. A story that genuinely haunts you, not because of what it shows, but because of what it reflects. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. And if you have, you already know what I mean. That's the deep dive on Obsession, the psychology of limerence, erotomania, the monkey's paw myth, and why this film is a genuine landmark horror release of 2026. If you found this interesting, subscribe. We do this kind of psychological film breakdown regularly. Drop a comment below. Have you seen Obsession yet? What was your reaction? Did you sympathize with Bear at any point? And if so, where did that sympathy run out? I'm genuinely curious. Until next time,